Welcome back to the Double Leg. I'm one half of the show, Hey Jai Picks. The other half of the show, the Parlay. Join me in to break down some UFC London. Let's get in. 15 fights. We're in London. The London cards are some of the best, in my opinion. The crowd's always into it. We got the headliner, Tom Aspinall, making his return after the injury. Damn near almost a full year. I think it was, July 22nd or somewhere around there last year. So almost a full year. They're back in London. He's taking on Marcin Tybura. But the co-main, Molly McCann, Stoliarenko. Other than that, there's a lot of good fights on this card, a lot of close matchups. I like to see these European fighters on these cards because you don't see them too often, and they're usually fighting on the London card. So, the crowd's going to be into it. But we're going to go through all these fights and give our predictions. These are not our bets. If you want our bets, you can hop in the premium subscription. The link will be down in the description there. You get all of our bets. We got a private Discord channel as well. A lot of good stuff going in there, and we're building a great community. So you don't want to miss out on that. It's less than $1 a day. But what do you think about the card before we start breaking it down?
Yeah, man, I love these London cards. We get an early start time, first of all. It's going to be 11 a.m. UNI's time. You get to wake up and watch fights right away. And like you said, the crowd is always into it. You're going to have a lot of hometown fighters. The vibes are going to be high. I'm excited for it. There's some good betting spots here, too. A lot of, pretty close lines. We'll see what happens as the week goes on. But I'm super pumped for this card.
Yeah, a lot of close matchups. It's going to be tough to be super confident on any side because they're good matchups. The matchmaking on this card is beautiful. You get there's not a lot of striker versus grappler. There's a lot of both guys are stand-up fighters, and then there's some that are both grapplers. So, yeah, we'll get into it with the main event. Tom Aspinall coming in at minus 500 in his return against Marcin Tybura, sitting at plus 350, over under 1.5 rounds, plus 150 for the over, minus 180 for the under there. 4-1 in their last 5 for both of these guys. Tom Aspinall coming off the injury, as I alluded to earlier. Before that, though, he was running through everybody in the UFC. I mean, he had some of the fastest finish times in heavyweight history, I believe. It was the fastest 5 fights, or the fastest 5 minutes of fight time or something like that. I don't know. But first round finishes, the only second round finish was to Andrei Arlovski. Rear naked choked him. But just rolling through guys, his win before the loss to Curtis Blades was to Alexander Volkov. That was at UFC London back in March of 2022. Submitted him there. And he's coming in here against Marcin Tybura, who hasn't looked terrible, but the level of competition isn't anywhere near what Tom Aspinall presents. That's kind of why you see this line. Tybura, last win was against Blagoy, and then before that was to Alexander Romanov. And his only loss over that 4-1 streak is to Alexander Volkov. So it's a big step up for him. If Tom Aspinall is 100%, then I think that line is pretty justified. It is his first fight back, so you're always kind of cautious taking a guy in his return fight. But what are you thinking?
Yeah, and I keep looking at Tybura, and I think personally I don't give him enough credit for being a decent fighter, just because he's not flashy. He doesn't do anything crazy. He doesn't hold the most power in his hands, or he's not going to go out and submit you all the time. But he's 7-1 in his last 8 fights. Regardless of who you're fighting, that's a pretty good record. Like you said, his only loss, Alexander Volkov. But you just watch these guys side by side, and Aspinall is so clean with the striking, and he's going to have the advantage on the ground over most guys. With the submission game is nasty as well. It's just hard to match a guy like Tom Aspinall. And I wish we would have seen more in the Curtis Blades fight, because I think that was going to be the first time we really see what Tom Aspinall's got, because I didn't expect him to get Blades out of there early in the first round. And Blades with the grappling and wrestling could probably keep up a little with Tom. So it was going to be interesting to see what happens as fights get longer for Aspinall, what he looks like in the middle second to third round. But we got robbed of it with the knee injury.
Yeah.
And, coming off of a knee injury like that, you're just never certain. I mean, knee injuries for these big dudes at heavyweight is a little worse than, a bantamweight or featherweight. These guys got a lot of weight on those knees. So it's interesting. But honestly, Aspinall, big favorite, rightfully so, in my opinion. Like I said, you watch these dudes side by side, and you can just tell Aspinall is the better all-around fighter. He's fast, hits really hard. I mean, he's putting dudes out. Like with the shot he hit Jake Collier with, just dropped him clean. So yeah, I like Aspinall here. Obviously, it's going to be my pick. I think he does get it done. I want to say don't underestimate Marcin Tybura, but in this matchup, I just think Tybura is in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, Tom Aspinall is like one of my favorite dudes to watch just because he's so big. And I was super high on him going into the Blades fight. I had just bet big on him to beat Volkov, and I was like, he was like near even money there. And then he was he was a slight favorite against Curtis Blades and then blows his knee out. So I was like super disappointed there. That was one of the worst cards for me because I was like, went heavy on him again. And then we talked about it on the recap show. It's like the worst is when they get injured. You can't even like see anything happen throughout the fight. But he's really just had his way, like with everybody. Like 100% takedown accuracy for him. He's shot 4 takedowns. He's gotten all 4 takedowns. He has 100% takedown defense. He has 100% submission success rate. He's attempted 2 submissions. He's got both of them. He's got 64% striking defense, 65% striking accuracy. He's landing 7.41 strikes per minute. He absorbs 2.87. Like he's just rolling through these guys. And a guy like Marcin Tybura, it's nothing like that he hasn't seen before, really. It's all like Tabura's a tough guy. Like he's been around in the UFC. This is going to be his 18th fight. So he's got the experience to be in there with Aspinall, but I just don't think it presents much like danger in any facet of the fight. Obviously, heavyweights, they could land the big bomb, but he's, winning decisions against like Blagoy, Romanov. He could have easily got Romanov out of there. Like Romanov was fast. He was completely done. Props to Tybura for surviving the first round, but dude, if you're any kind of athlete in the heavyweight division, you should be able to finish Romanov in round 2 or 3 there because he was just standing there wanting to get out of there. But yeah, I mean, the wins, Walt Harris, Greg Hardy, like can't really get behind him. It seems like any time he faces a guy up towards the top of the division like a Volkov, it doesn't go well for him. So yeah, Tom Aspinall is obviously the pick. If you're taking Tybura, I mean, props to you. You must see something that I don't, but I don't think many people are going to be taking him.
Better hope for another injury.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, supposedly, just to touch on the injury, that Aspinall had the knee injury before going into that fight. It had been lingering like for a couple of years, and then it just finally gave out on him there, which is like really unfortunate. But yeah, gave out on him there. But if he gets it fixed and he's back, it's I don't want to say like too quick of a turnaround, but I guess, everything with the recovery went well. And I mean, bigger guy, they don't need that like quick twitch, those quick twitch muscles as much, kind of just more focused on the power. He's super smooth on the feet, and he is very fast heavyweight. Like compared to a lot of these guys, like I think he could probably just style on Tybura on the feet.
Yeah.
And if he goes for the takedowns, the BJJ is there too. Like that's the X factor, I think, with Aspinall. He can go everywhere. He's smooth on the feet, and if he takes you down, he's like super controlled with the BJJ. He's super methodical with it. So yeah, I like his future in the heavyweight division.
Yeah, what's crazy? These two guys, like Tom Aspinall, 67% significant striking accuracy, or just striking accuracy. Well, Tybura is 60%. Like that's 2 higher percentages you're going to see. Like, you don't see a lot of guys landing at 60%, and Tom Aspinall 67%. So that was pretty interesting to me. Tom Aspinall is going to be 2 inches taller too, and for Tybura, same reach and everything. But I just see him being 37 years old. He's going to have a speed disadvantage. Tom Aspinall is just going to be able to get this fight wherever it goes. So
yeah, I can't wait for a Aspinall Pavlovich matchup.
Yeah, dude, that's a good one. That's a good one.
But yeah, we're both on Aspinall, and I think most people would be. Co-main event. Molly McCann coming in at -210 against Yulia Stoliarenko, sitting at +170. Over under 2.5 rounds, +110 for the over, -140 for the under. Molly McCann coming in 3-2 in her last 5. Yulia Stoliarenko, will she make 125? Is the big question. Because if you haven't heard by now, Yulia Stoliarenko has fought at 135 most of her career. Her last fight was at a catchweight of 140. And she fainted not once, but twice on the scale, trying to make 135. And now she's supposed to be cutting down to 125. Don't know how well that's going to go. I looked at her Instagram. She looks leaner. I would say that. And I guess, if she's going to attempt it, she better not mess it up, because if she messes it up, she's getting cut. She's 1-5 in the UFC, and this is probably her last chance to really do something. And seems like they're throwing her to the wolves, because they're throwing Molly McCann in here off a loss to Erin Blanchfield, which is nothing to hang your head about, but she got absolutely smoked. They're throwing her in the co-main event spot on the London card, obviously, because she's from England, Liverpool, and maybe a favorable matchup for her. She's just got to avoid the armbar, because the deal with Yulia Stoliarenko. All of her wins, besides one, are by armbar. 9 of her 10 wins, and that's her move. So if you're Molly, don't even mess around on the ground. Just use your striking. And she's got pretty decent hands, but nothing too crazy. Maybe we'll see another spinning back elbow. I wouldn't doubt it, with everything that the UFC's got invested into her. But what are you thinking?
Yeah, look, I'm not convinced this fight's even gonna take place, if I'm being honest. I mean, what's up with the UFC? First of all, putting Molly and Stoliarenko into the co-main event on this London card. Like, I get Molly McCann, has some hype for what she is in that region of the world. It is London card, but at the same time, man, there's better fights on this card that you could advertise. So I'm skeptical it's even going to happen, just because, like you touched on it, Stoliarenko fights at 135. Her last fight, she couldn't even get past 139, fainted twice trying to make the weight. Like, what is the difference between then and now, where she's going to comfortably make 125 and be healthy enough to fight? So, yeah, I'm skeptical. Molly McCann on the feet should just piece her up, if I'm being honest. I think Molly, this is Molly all day long. But the one thing you do kind of have to look at is Stoliarenko. If she gets it to the ground, she's decent. She has landed some takedowns on some girls. We saw her take down Chelsea Chandler in her last fight, Jessica Rose Clark, and Molly McCann has been taken down in the past. I think she got taken down 7 times by Laura Procopio back in 2021, and then also Talia Santos was able to take her down with ease. I know Talia Santos is a different level than Stoliarenko, but still, Molly has been a little susceptible to the takedowns in the past. Don't really see it happening here, but there's always that chance. And if Stoliarenko wins, it's got to be by sub. So if you're looking at props on this fight and you want a chance on the dog, you might as well take the submission prop. So, yeah, I'm taking Molly for my pick. I think it's pretty cut and dry. I won't be surprised if this one falls off the card, though.
Yeah, -210 is it's a tough price, just because, like, this is women's MMA and it's kind of not the highest level. And, like, Stoliarenko's got that nuclear option in the armbar. Like, if she catches her in the armbar, you kind of screwed. But if Molly McCann fights smart enough, she should be able to avoid it. Like, it's one move. Like, that's just how she's going to win. So just don't go there. And I think she should be able to avoid it. Molly McCann doesn't have the longest arm, so she can get that thing out of there if it does start to go in there. And it's just it's a clear spot that they want her to get a win. So, yeah, I'm going to go Molly McCann. But like you said, will this fight even take place? Kind of ballsy for them to put it at the co-main event, considering they don't know if Yulia is going to make weight.
Well, I think that's why they put 15 fights on the card.
It must be because it's your co-main event falls out. That's kind of not a good look. But yeah, we'll go with Molly. A featherweight bout here. Andre Fili coming in at +170 against Nathaniel Wood, coming in at minus 210, over under 2.5 rounds, minus 240 for the over, plus 200 for the under. Andre Fili, 2-2-1, or a 2-2 and a no contest in his last 5. And Nathaniel Wood, since moving up to 145, has looked pretty dang good. He's on a nice little 2-fight win streak since he moved up. So he's 2-0 in the featherweight division, beat Charles Rosa and Charles Jourdain. So 2-0 against the Charles. But he's getting Andre Fili here, who is he's sitting at a pretty decent dog price here. And he's a big veteran in the UFC. This will be his 20th fight. He's 10-8 in the UFC with the no contest, so it'll be his real 20th fight. And training out of Team Alpha Male, like Nathaniel Wood's probably nothing different than he's seen his entire career. I mean, he's been in there with Max Holloway, Yair Rodriguez, Calvin Kattar, Sadiq Youssef, Bryce Mitchell, Michael Johnson. Like, we all know Nathaniel Wood's going to be touted for his hands and the work he does on the feet. But Andre Fili's seen that like his entire career. So I'm kind of thinking Andre Fili's a live dog, but it's always tough to go against the Englishmen when they're in London. So yeah, a steep price on Nathaniel Wood, but I think this is probably a fight that stays on the feet unless Andre Fili wants to mix in the takedowns, which he could do. He has shown to go to that from time to time. If you look at the stats, Andre Fili lands 2.38 takedowns per 15 minutes. Nathaniel Wood has looked pretty good as far as his takedown defense goes since moving up to 145, but Fili's a big dude, 5'11". He's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage as well. And for a fight that's probably going to go to a decision, probably going to stay on the feet, kind of leaning the dog, but like I said, home field advantage somewhat. So what are you thinking?
Yeah, home field advantage makes it tough in this one. But like from an analytical standpoint, not who I think is going to win or who I think anybody should bet on. But I mean, I think there is value on Fili because you break it down and like it's going to be a pretty evenly matched fight. Like you said, Nathaniel Wood coming up to 145. Fili's 5'11. Wood is 5'6. I think he's going to be at a 4 or 5-inch reach disadvantage. And although Andre Fili has a negative strike differential, I could see Nathaniel Wood getting touched up by him just for the fact that Nathaniel Wood already gets hit with almost 5 significant strikes per minute at 135. And now you're getting a striker who's 4 inches of reach on you and, 3-4 inches taller as well. So maybe he gets hit a little bit more this fight than normal. So I think it makes it really interesting. And Fili, has that wrestling in his back pocket. Nathaniel Wood can wrestle as well. So I think that kind of offsets each other. And I think it's going to be pretty equal in that department as well, to where we're going to get a lot closer fight than this line's kind of showing. So for that reason, from an analytical standpoint, I think picking the dog or betting on the dog is going to hold good value, especially as the week goes on. I think there's going to be some people coming in on Nathaniel Wood, hometown guy, people wanting to get their money on him. So yeah, I could see Andre Fili being a pretty good dog play this week. I do think Wood probably edges him out. But at the same time, man, Wood's not really out there finishing dudes. So Andre Fili does have some power in his hands. He's got some submissions on his record, and he has a lot of decision wins as well. So anywhere this fight goes, I think he's going to be equipped to hang in there. For the pick, I'm going to take Nathaniel Wood, but don't be surprised if Fili cashes your dog ticket.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Nathaniel Wood too, just for him being at home. I don't love the price, but I do think he's going to have a slight edge as far as output goes on the feet, and the takedown defense has been pretty solid for him. And if he wants to go to it himself, he's not too bad in that department. I mean, you got 5 on Charles Jourdain, but we all know Jourdain. He's a wild fighter. It's not too hard to take him down unless you're Chrome Gracie, and that's like your whole game plan. So yeah, we're both going with Nathaniel Wood. Paul Krieg coming in at plus 195. He's moving down to middleweight. So this is going to be his middleweight debut against Andre Muniz, who's sitting at minus 235, over under 1.5 rounds, minus 140 for the over, plus 110 for the under. 4-1 in his last 5 for Andre Muniz, coming off the loss to Brendan Allen, where he got submitted in the 3rd round. Paul Krieg, 3-2 in his last 5. And as I said, debut at middleweight. We'll see how he looks. But he doesn't have to deal with as big of punchers here at middleweight as he did at 205. He's coming off a 2-fight losing streak. and he was on quite the run. I mean, he had submitted Nikita Krylov, had the TKO against Jamal Hill, TKO against or submission tap to strikes against Shogun Hua, Gaji Muradov submission. And I mean, he was on a run at 205, and then a couple losses. Guys kind of just figured him out. Volkan was like, I'm not going to go to the ground with you, and just kind of cruise to a decision. That was Paul Craig's only fight that ever went to a decision that he's ever been in, was against Volkan Oezdemir last July, so almost a year ago. And then he fights Johnny Walker at the beginning of the year and gets hammer fisted when he was going for a leg, and decides to move down to 185 against Andre Muniz. Both guys, great BJJ. Both guys got a lot of submissions under their record. Who you leaning in this one?
Yeah, it's another tough one. Both guys on the ground are phenomenal. I love watching Paul Craig on the ground, especially when he gets guys in that guard and throwing up arm bars. And like what he did to Jamal Hill was super impressive. And like some of the wins on his record are just hard to fathom that he's beat them. You got Jamal Hill, Nikita Krylov, guys who are, Jamal Hill maybe not so much on the ground, but Nikita Krylov, pretty slick in the jiu-jitsu department. And he's out there, submitting him via triangle choke. So that was super impressive to me. I mean, he beat Magomed Ankalaev as well. And it just, watching him in his last fight against Walker, it's hard to wrap your head around that this dude has beat guys like that. But he is dangerous. Muniz, coming off the loss to Brendan Allen, where he was a similar favorite. I believe he was like minus 200 against Allen as well.
Yeah.
So he's like coming in back-to-back minus 200 area after losing to Allen. Kind of interesting to me. But at the same time, like you look at it stylistically, and if Muniz wants to keep this fight on the feet, I think he will. I think he's going to have a slightly better striking. Paul Craig maybe hits a tad harder, but he's not out there landing many strikes when he does fight. So Muniz also, like, believe it or not, he's got, a decent amount of UFC fights. He's fought Uriah Hall, took care of him just by taking him down and controlling him. Fought Eric Anders, beat him, in the first round by armbar. And, all of his fights combined, he's only getting hit 1.74 significant strikes per minute. So striking defense is decent. He's not really giving guys chance to land these big shots on him. And I don't see Paul Craig having much success on the feet either. And I think if Muniz follows him down into his guard, I think he's good enough with the jiu-jitsu to survive. So, yeah, I see Muniz winning this fight. Hate the price, especially coming off that loss to Brendan Allen. But I do think Muniz gets it done here.
Yeah, I absolutely hated Andre Muniz's game plan in his last fight against Brendan Allen. I was screaming at my TV, like, what are you doing? Like, he has some of the best BJJ like we've seen in the UFC, and he just decided not to use it that night. I don't know what he was on, but they were all talking like who was the better BJJ, him or Brendan Allen, and Andre Muniz goes out there, and we all thought Brendan Allen would probably have like a slight advantage on the feet just because he's there more than Andre Muniz has been. Muniz decides to strike with him for the first 2 rounds and then tries to go for the takedown in round 3 when he might be losing. Finally decides to go for it in round 3, and he gets taken down, and then he gets submitted. So I'm like, what are we doing here? And as you said, minus 200 somewhere around there with Brendan Allen. Same price here against Paul Craig. Not quite the similar opponent that Brendan Allen is, but who knows how Paul Craig's going to be at middleweight. Like he's going to be pretty big for middleweight, like 6'3", obviously going to have, if he's submitting guys at 205, like imagine the strength that he's going to have going down to 185. We'll see how he looks with the weight cut, but from what I've seen, he looks like he's in pretty damn good shape. Just kind of shed off some of the excess weight, and he looks pretty lean. So coming into this one, you look at the stats, both guys have terrible takedown defense because they don't care to get taken down. That's where they want to go. Both guys have very poor takedown accuracy because they're going to shoot for takedowns. And Paul Craig's thing is just pull guard now. So I'm interested to see how this fight plays out. Like, does it just play out as a kickboxing fight? Because these two guys are like, they don't want to end up on bottom or something, but Paul Craig's like never afraid to end up on bottom. So my fear about with taking Paul Craig is he goes and tries to pull guard, and then he just ends up on the ground on his back for most of the fight, and Muniz just avoids all the submissions. But
yeah,
at the price he's at, I'm willing to take it. I'm going to say it's dog or pass to me. And I fell for the Paul Craig trap before. I fell for it against Volkan Oezdemir. I did not fall for it against Johnny Walker. I learned my lesson there, but he's a bigger dog here against Andre Muniz, who doesn't present much on the feet and much knockout power. So I got to go Paul Craig. I got to go with my boy here, you. And we'll see how he looks at middleweight. Maybe he's just levels above in strength moving forward. So.
Yeah, and if you are like on Paul Craig, the one thing that's got to give you a little bit of confidence is looking at his past losses. He's really only losing to these big power punchers, guys with like good striking. You look at Alonzo Minifield, good striking, who's powerful. Khalil Roundtree, Tyson Pedro, Volkan Oezdemir, Johnny Walker. I mean, those are the guys he's getting beat by, and he did get subbed by Jimmy Crute, but could be a one-off thing. So, but I mean, he's submitting and beating Nikita Krylov, Shogun Hua in the rematch. I mean, Magomed Ankalaev via triangle. Like, this dude is super dangerous no matter who is in your guard. So, yeah, man, if he's not fighting a power puncher, it is going to play out super interesting in my opinion too.
Yeah, I think if there's a guy that's always live for a finish, it's Paul Craig. Yeah, even if you have him knocked out on the ground, just ask Nikita Krylov. Like, still alive for a finish. So
he just shocks the hell out of you too. It's like, where did that? It's crazy the stuff he pulls off. So
I love it. I love it. I'm gonna go with Paul Craig. You're going with Muniz. A lightweight bout here. Jai Herbert coming in at plus 125 against Fares Ziam, coming in at minus 155. Over under 2.5 rounds. Minus 141 for the over, plus 111 for the under. Jai Herbert coming off the draw to Ludovic Klein and could have got the win there. But 35 years of age for Jai Herbert. He's getting up there in age. 26 years old for Fares Ziam, so 9 years younger. We all know the stat, 6 years of age difference, like 69% win rate for the younger fighter. Yeah. But Jai Herbert is the underdog here, so it makes a little bit of a sense. Fighting in his home country of England, where he's had quite the run. I mean, he had the draw back in March. He's always on the London cards. He had the draw back in March, the win over Kyle Nelson in July, and then nearly knocks out Ilia Topuria in March of 2022, but then gets absolutely smoked in the next time, in the next round. So, yeah, I mean, the striking's good, but he's usually the bigger guy, and Fares Ziam's going to match up with him as far as the height goes. Both guys 6'1", 2-inch reach advantage for Jai Herbert. So I'm interested to see how this one plays out because both guys have been kind of mixing in the wrestling here and there as of recently, but both guys are long, lengthy strikers. And this is another fun matchup because I'm not sure how it's going to play out, how they come out with the game plans. But what are you thinking?
Yeah, both guys are kind of lower volume on the feet, and I just think Jai Herbert's got a little more creativity and craftiness to his striking, like with the kicks. Like you saw the shot he hit Topuria with. Topuria was in the middle of throwing a combination. He snuck it up there in between punches and just rocked him. Like Topuria never saw it coming. And I like that aspect of Jai Herbert's game. Like he can catch you at any minute. He's good at hiding that high kick too. And Ziam, against Figlak, he looked good. And on the feet, he doubled up on the strikes. And a lot of those were on the ground, but like on the feet, man, he's just a little too patient and fights off of his back foot. And he doesn't fight great moving backwards. So if Jai can just get him moving back towards the cage and make him fight on the defense, I think he's going to have a lot of success. But I mean, Jai also has fought the better competition, in my opinion. Renato Moicano, Francisco Trinaldo, Ilia Topuria, and then he's beat guys, like Kyle Nelson and Kama Worthy, who he's supposed to beat. Last fight, too, he won the fight if he doesn't get the point taken, in my opinion. Or I guess in general, I mean, the scorecards, I guess, show that. But, stand with Ludovic Klein, who's a great kickboxer. And, it was a pretty even fight on the feet. Was pretty impressive to me. I thought it looked pretty good. So I do see him having a good chance at Ziam here as the underdog. It'll just depend, I guess, if he can keep this thing on the feet. I think that's what it comes down to. I think on the feet, he will potentially give Ziam some problems to where Ziam's going to want to get this thing to the ground. So, yeah, give me the dog here. I was on Jai Herbert in the last fight. So mad at that point deduction. I'm going to go with him again here. It seems like he fights decent when he's in front of his home crowd.
Yeah, I think this is a kind of a 50-50 fight. And, by default, I would, tend to say the dog would be the better play because I do think it's 50-50. But for Ziam, the wins aren't like super impressive. The one over Jamie Malarkey is solid. A similar frame between like Jamie Malarkey and Jai Herbert. But I just think Jai's going to come in here. I thought he looked super good against Ludwig Klein.
Yeah,
Jai did. Even when he got taken down by Ludovic, like Ludovic couldn't do any work. He was so active off his back with the kicks and the elbows, like he didn't even get a chance to do anything on the ground. So I think Jai comes in here. He trains at the same gym that Leon Edwards does, and just being around that, I think has elevated the game a little bit because we saw, his last time out was when it was on Leon Edwards' card, and the improvements from when Leon won to now. I don't know. Maybe you can put stock in that or not. I just think he looked a lot better compared to like the fight against Kyle Nelson. He won, but it wasn't like some domination, and he was like a pretty solid favorite going into that one. And then the fight against Ludovic, he looked like he had a different type of urgency in there and a type of confidence. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Jai Herbert as the slight dog. And you got to take into account Ziam trains in France, and there's a Paris card coming up. So why wouldn't they have him on the Paris card?
Yeah.
Maybe got to get the Black Country banger a little bit of a win here. So,
yeah. And I mean, Ziam being over -150, like I don't think I could pay that on him against Jai Herbert. I think it is dog or pass right now in probably a coin flip fight. So,
yeah, at the end of the day, like, if you think it's 50-50, you got to go with the dog then at a plus 120 there. So, yeah, we'll go with the Black Country banger. Lerone Murphy coming in at -145 against Josh Culibao, sitting at plus 115. Over under 2.5 rounds, -200 for the over, plus 165 for the under. The undefeated, but with a draw, Lerone Murphy coming back. He made his somewhat of a return back in March and got a win. It was a close fight against Gabriel Santos. Josh Culibao was on the Perth card against Melsik Bagdasaryan, who we saw last week, and he was getting busted up until he finally found the back and got the rear naked chokes thrown in there. But 11-1-1 for him. So his only loss is to Jalen Turner. This is going to be a good fight too. Like, this is a really solid fight in the featherweight division. Lerone Murphy undefeated. He's had a good couple wins. I mean, was it Douglas Silva de Andrade?
Yeah.
Ricardo Ramos, and a draw to Zubi to Hugov. And then the knockout to Makwan back in 2021. Comes back in 2023, as I said, and beat Gabriel Santos by split. Maybe some home cooking on that one. But Culibao is a very solid striker as well. And getting the submission win in his last time out just shows the improvements going for him. So who are you thinking in this one? Pretty close fight as well.
Yeah, I think it is a close fight. And, man, I was thinking today, Lerone Murphy takes the fight against Gabriel Santos on the last London card, and Santos gives him all that he wanted. I mean, that was a super close fight. I think people could argue that Gabriel Santos even won the fight, scoring 5 takedowns, and striking numbers were in Lerone Murphy's favor by 20 strikes or so, but still super close fight. And then Gabriel Santos goes out there and gets knocked dead by David Onama. So it just makes you wonder, how good is Lerone Murphy? Because he's not really, outside of Douglas Silva de Andrade and Ricardo Ramos. You look at some of his regional scene wins, he wasn't really fighting many crazy good opponents. The Amir Khani win, knockout. I mean, Amir Khani's just not the best fighter in the world, not even with the UFC anymore, I do believe. And then has the draw with Zubaira Tukhugov. But Culibao beats Melsik Bagdasaryan. Super impressive the way he did it. Jumped on the neck the minute Melsik dropped to the ground with that slip. And on the feet, he wasn't getting like outclassed by any means. He was probably losing, but Melsik just showed in the fight a few days ago how extremely slick and how good he is with his kickboxing. And Culibao was able to hang with him a little bit. So if he can hang with Melsik in that regards, I think he hangs with Lerone Murphy. Culibao, too, he just seems like he's got that attitude where he wants to scrap with these dudes. And I think he could give Lerone Murphy his first O here. I mean, Culibao has beaten, decent opponents, doesn't have the highest strength schedule either, loses to Jalen Turner. But outside of that, man, he hasn't really shown too many like flaws in his game wherever the fight goes. So it's another one of those fights. I think the line should be a tad closer, maybe closer to pick him. And if it should be that close, maybe you got to lean the dog here. I'm going to take him though, even though Lerone Murphy's going to be in front of that home crowd. We saw it in the last fight, man. He kind of looked like a deer in headlights at times when he realized this kid Gabriel Santos was giving him the fight that, basically one of the closer fights he's had. So, yeah, give me Josh Culibao here.
Yeah, I'm kind of seeing it somewhat the same way as far as like it's kind of a 50-50 again, and by default you got to go with dog, but I don't like to go against the Englishman on these London cards, but at the same time I'm like Culibao is a dog. Like he was getting busted up by Melsik and blood all over his face, but still able to like keep his composure and get the submission win. He's gonna be in a tough environment here going into London. And last time he was in Australia, so that kind of favored him a little bit. But either way, I see this fight being a fight on the feet. I don't think either guy's going to shoot because neither guy are like Santos was the guy initiating all the grappling exchanges against Lerone Murphy. Culibao, not too keen on the grappling. He's just a guy that wants to stand and scrap. He's got pretty solid takedown defense as well. So if Lerone does try to take it to the ground, Culibao is pretty keen to it. So it's probably going to be a 3-round fight on the feet. Culibao, he doesn't have the greatest volume, but neither does Lerone Murphy. But in his last fight, he had some pretty solid volume, landed 93. Home cooking again. I'm going to go with Lerone Murphy, unfortunately, for Josh Culibao, because I like the guy. The guy's a dog. But, yeah, I just think Lerone probably going to be a little bit more active. And, I'm going to take him. Home cooking. Bantamweight bout. This one's going to be fun as well. Davey Grant coming in at +110 against Daniel Marcos sitting at -140. Over under 2.5 rounds, -140 for the over, +110 for the under. Marcos undefeated, 14-0. And Davey Grant, 37 years old, sitting at 13-6, 3-2 in his last 5. What a fight it was his last time out against Rafael Assunção. Gets the 3rd round submission when he was probably losing on the scorecards, or he was losing on the scorecards. The inverted triangle, like the Hail Mary of all Hail Marys, and he gets it done in the 3rd round. That's his second 3rd round finish in a row. He knocked out Luis Smolka in the 3rd round there. But before that, 2 straight losses by decision to Adrian Yanez and Marlon Vera. He's 6-5 in the UFC. 37 years old. You got to wonder how long in the tooth he is at this point. But Daniel Marcos bursting on the scene. I'm honestly surprised to see him as a favorite in this role because he was a dog against Simon Oliveira. And he busted him up and got him out of there in the 2nd round. And he was a slight dog against Brandon Lewis on the Contender Series. So back-to-back dog spots for Daniel Marcos. Cashing both. And now he's a favorite against the vet, Davey Grant. What are you thinking?
Yeah, so for Daniel Marcos on the Contender Series, I faded him just because he had been on like a, what was it? Like a 3-year layoff or something like that? 2 or 3-year layoff. And I was like, man, I don't like that at all. But it was clear that the dude had been training and getting better.
Yeah.
Because he looked really good. And then against Simon Oliveira, man, the dude came in and just from start to finish outclassed him on the feet, stuffed his takedowns, avoided those big spinning back fists every time Simon Oliveira threw every, 10 of them. So, yeah, on the feet, he looks super good. He looks very, very high level. He mixes in his kicks and his body work really, really well. But the one thing is, man, Davey Grant's going to be way more of a dog and a scrapper than Simon Oliveira was on the feet. Like Davey Grant's super experienced. He's fought some really good fighters. I mean, his last 2 losses were Adrian Yanez and Marlon Vera, Chito Vera. And the Yanez fight was by split decision he lost. So, he's on that level with those guys as far as striking goes. He landed 98 strikes on Adrian Yanez. He landed 83 on Cheeto. The dude can strike. And, if it goes to the ground, we saw him with that inverted triangle against Rafael Sunsao, who Sunsao's damn good on the ground too. So Davy Grant's got skills everywhere the fight goes. I just worry maybe it's a little too much for Daniel Marcos, just coming off of one fight in the UFC. I mean, he fought on the Contender Series Brandon Lewis, who, didn't seem to be too equipped to deal with that kind of pressure and that kind of striking on the feet. So, yeah, if it stays on the feet, it could be a close fight here. But Davy Grant, never been knocked out in the UFC. He is scrappy. He is tough. And he's got a good ground game as well. I think he's got more tools to win this fight if he can just avoid those big shots of Marcos. I'm going to stick with him too. Another hometown guy. It's just Daniel Marcos. I think he's going to be a phenomenal fighter, but I think this is just maybe a tad step up a little bit too soon because Davy Grant's a veteran, man.
Yeah, this is a tough one, man.
It is. It's really tough. It's really tough.
I think Daniel Marcos can pull it off just because of the youth and like where Davy Grant, because Davy Grant was losing to Rafael Sunsao. But a lot of that was due to the grappling that Sunsao, was able to implement. Don't see Daniel Marcos doing it in that one. Like this one, 2 kickboxers basically. And probably going to see a lot of leg kicks. Yeah. I do like the front kick from Marcos right up the middle. If he catches Davy Grant with that, I don't know if you could take a front kick clean to the chin like that and still walk through it. Davy Grant never been knocked out. Maybe this could be the time. But at this point, I don't know that I could get behind the price of Marcos because, like, how do you go from being an underdog against 2 guys that probably shouldn't even be in the UFC to being a favorite against a guy who's like a UFC veteran, 6-5 in the UFC? He's got wins over Cheeto Vera. I mean, Jonathan Martinez, like, he's not that old. 37, but, Rafael Sunsao was also, 40 years old? So, I mean,
yeah.
Like they could still do it at that age. I don't think he has that many miles on him. I mean, this is going to be his 20th professional fight. So, yeah, I got to lean the dog because I just think the line is a little interesting. But the part of me is like, I like Marcos because the youth and the durability and just the overall, I think, athleticism at this age could be the key. But at this price, it's like, can you really justify it? I don't know. So yeah, I think the value side is the Davy Grant side. If I got to be honest. So yeah, I'm gonna go with Davy Grant.
Yeah, and you know who Marcos kind of reminds me of? Like I was going through today and looking at the records and seeing who Marcos kind of resembles, and it is kind of that Jonathan Martinez style, like good leg kicks, good kicks to the body, good striking on the feet. Davy Grant was able to, land 48 strikes on him in 2 rounds and then find that knockout in the middle of the second round on him. So I don't know, man. It's a tough one, but it's hard to not, like you said in the last fight we broke down, it's hard not to get behind these home field advantage guys. And Davy Grant's definitely going to have some fans there.
Yeah. One last thing, too, is Davy Grant back-to-back third-round finishes. The guy's a dog. He's there for all 3 rounds.
Yeah.
Daniel Marcos, he had the decision win against Brandon Lewis, but if you watch that 3rd round, like, he was just coasting. Like, he didn't really want to – he probably could have got him out of there if he had a lot of the tank, but I think he knew he didn't have much left in the tank, and he kind of needed to coast because if he emptied the tank and there was nothing left, he could, blow his chance to win the fight there. So he was coasting and obviously didn't make it to the 3rd round against Simon Oliveira. But, yeah, gas tank, I'd probably favor Davy Grant. It's just a dog. Home cooking there. So slight dog shot, definitely worth it. Welterweight bout here. Danny Roberts coming in at -105 against Johnny Parsons, who sits at -125. Over under 2.5 rounds, +105 for the over, -135 for the under. Johnny Parsons, if you don't know who he is, it's because he hasn't fought in a long time. And he hasn't fought since his Contender Series fight, but 31 years old for him, 36 years old for Danny Roberts. This isn't one of the better matchups on the card, I'm not going to lie. But it is an intriguing fight because there's a lot of unknowns. Like Johnny Parsons hasn't fought in near 2 years. He's last fought on the Contender Series against Solomon Renfro, won a split decision. That was like kind of a wild fight, kind of a war. And Solomon Renfro, he's in the PFL now, and he's kind of been that guy that's like fringe UFC, and he just never got the chance. So it's not a great win, but it's not like a bad win by any means. But he's just been off for so long. It's like, why have you been off for so long? I think he's been out with some injuries or something, or some kind of, I don't know, concussion deal or whatever. I'm not really sure, but he's been out with some injuries for the time being. Danny Roberts hasn't looked very good as of recently. Back-to-back losses to Jack Della and a decision loss to Trinaldo. So yeah, it's a greasy one. But I don't know. I mean, if you're taking Parsons, you're basically saying like you're going off of what he could be,
Right.
like at that point. I mean, he's a favorite, which is kind of shocking to me, but what are you thinking?
Yeah, if you go with Parsons, I think you just have to play the KO prop, if I'm being honest. Like, you watch some of his tape, and the dude does hold some power. I mean, he's got how many wins? 8 wins, 6 by knockout. And even though some of the knockouts he has earlier on in his career against guys who aren't the best, but at the same time, I mean, if you watch the tape, you can tell the dude, when he connects, does hold some pop. And for Roberts, coming off the loss, obviously, to Jack Della Maddalena by knockout in the first round, which is understandable because Jack's such a phenomenal striker. But go through his UFC record sometime and look at all of his wins. And for the average fans, tell me, I mean, I don't know if the average fan would know any of his wins in the UFC. And he's got 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 or 8 wins in the UFC. And I guarantee you the average fan couldn't name one single guy or even recognize the name of one single guy. So, he's going to want to keep it standing too. He doesn't really shoot a lot of takedowns, has somewhat of a submission threat on the ground. Even though, I think he's going to want to keep this fight standing. How tall was Johnny Parsons again? I was trying to look. 5'9". This is going to be another fight where Danny Roberts is going to be the taller guy. 6'1", Parsons 5'9". So he's going to have a slight advantage in the reach department and the length. So I think if he fights on the outside, he might win a decision and just avoid that Parsons right hand. And if he can do that, I think he could get this fight done. But same time, man, betting wise, it's one where I'm not going to be rushing to throw my money on it just because of the layoff of Parsons. Haven't seen him against higher level competition very much. He's still such an unknown. So, not begging to throw my money by any means. I'm going to stick with Danny Roberts here. I'm going to stick with the experience, the UFC level experience. And I do like in a striking matchup that he will hold the reach and the height advantage here.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell to do with this one because
it is one of the, it is a fight where you're just kind of like throw a coin up in the air, whichever way it lands, that's what you got to go with because there's not much to go off here either way.
yeah, I'd probably wait and see like how Johnny Parsons looks at weigh-ins and stuff like that, just to like see what the vibe is like. But yeah, I wouldn't get too invested in this one. For the pick, I'm going to go with Danny Roberts just because of the home cooking. He's got some pretty solid. He's got a solid jab, and if he stays safe on the feet, I think he could win just off of volume. But Johnny Parsons is fairly durable, and what he's shown is a toughness to just keep coming forward and make it a dogfight. So if he can do that, I don't see Danny Roberts like being too successful in a dogfight. So yeah, I'm gonna stick with Danny Roberts for the pick, but it's not a confident one. It's one you're gonna have to keep your eye on as the week goes on. Lightweight bout here, Mark Diakiese coming in at plus 140 against Joel Alvarez, sitting at minus 170. Over under 2.5 rounds, plus 150 for the over, minus 180 for the under. Alvarez 4-1 in his last 5, both men 38 years of age, and Mark Diakiese 2-3 in his last 5, coming off the loss to Michael Johnson, which was quite the disappointment because the man was a minus 330 favorite. That was back in UFC Orlando, and he fought pretty dumb, if you ask me, because you watch the guy wrestle or you watch like him shoot takedowns, and you're like, there's no one in the world that could defend those takedowns because he's so athletic and so explosive. But he didn't really have that game plan going against Michael Johnson. And it was weird because his past 2 fights before that was his game plan, to like shoot heavy takedowns and just be heavy on top and get top control and win the fight. In the one against Michael Johnson, it looked like he was more so of a crowd pleaser, and it did not work out well for him. He cannot stand and strike with Michael Johnson. Then eventually tries to go for some takedowns, and it's just too late. Like, he doesn't have the explosiveness or the confidence in the fight to really land anything. So didn't go well for him. Like, the talent is there athletically and probably not like technically striking wise, but he is explosive on the feet. Alvarez, the guy has got the frame. I mean, he rarely makes 155. Let's be honest. Like, he doesn't really make 155 all that often. He made 156 his last time out, but before that, 157 and a half, 159 and a half. And yeah, like, he's 6'3" at 155, and he's not some skinny dude. Like, he's still pretty fairly built. I don't know if he's going to make weight this time, but either way, he's going to be a lot longer. The submission threat is always there. He's got a nasty guillotine. Like, that's his go-to move. He's gotten that multiple times. He's got a good triangle, arm bar, the tall man jiu-jitsu type stuff. And Mark Diakiese, if he's going to shoot on him, he's got to be cognizant of that guillotine. Otherwise, he's going to get guillotined because he's gotten guillotined twice in his career. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, plus money on Diakiese is like not the worst thing, because he could just go in there and wrestle it and make it boring and probably win if he's safe enough. But Alvarez has got that dangerous submission game. So it makes me hesitant to take him. But what are you thinking?
Yeah, the Diakiese line, being that he's an underdog, looks super enticing, and his game plan should be to go out there and just get Joel Alvarez down and fight your fight on top. Use your top pressure, your ground and pound control, and just get this decision win. But I mean, against Michael Johnson, like, all that went out the window for some reason. And maybe he learned from that and says, okay, I got to go out here and just stick to my game plan. Don't fall in love with this striking, because at the end of the day, man, Joel Alvarez is a monster. He's 6'3", 77-inch reach. Like, he's going to be the bigger guy here. I think Diakiese's 5'10", 73-inch reach, and Alvarez 6'3". Like, that's a pretty big difference here. And to take Alvarez down, he has been taken down before, but like I said, he's a big, strong dude. And a lot of times, if you just shoot in on him, that neck leaves exposed for 1 second. He grabs it. He's got a good guillotine. He's got a good squeeze. And like you mentioned, Diakiese's kind of, his downfall is getting that guillotine loss. He's got one to Rafael Alves. He's got one to Dan Hooker. And, I think Alvarez is going to be a little bit stronger than both of those guys, a little bit longer too, some room to reach those arms down and snatch that neck up. So I do think Alvarez wins this fight on the feet too. He can crack. He's got, knockout wins over Thiago Moises, and he's got another one in the UFC, I believe, too. Yeah, 2 knockouts, 2 submissions. So he's dangerous everywhere it goes. And Diakiese, that fight IQ he showed in his last fight just didn't do it for me. Lost handily to Michael Johnson. And, Michael Johnson's a guy who's kind of, hit or miss. So, yeah, I'm going to stick with Joel Alvarez for the pick. But as far as betting goes, it's kind of hard because you want to lay the dog here on Diakiese because of the odds. But at the same time, there's just so many, things that could go wrong for him in this matchup.
Yeah, I want to go Alvarez, but I fear that if he gets taken down, he's just going to work off his back to try to get submissions.
And just lose rounds.
But maybe the beating he took off his back his last time out against Sarukian might make him rethink that, because he took some elbows to the dome and he was squirting blood everywhere, and it was nasty. That's if you watch that fight, that'll make you not want to fight ever in your life, because you take one of those elbows to the nose and you're split open like that, and the guy just continues to hit you. Hell no. But yeah, that's my only fear with Alvarez. And but otherwise, I'm going to take him because I think he takes a learning lesson from that one against Arman.
Yeah, and my last thing about Alvarez is you look at his record, man. He's 19-3. His only UFC losses: Damir Ismagulov, who's 20-2, and Arman Sarukian, who's some people are saying is going to contend for a title here really, really soon. So, dude, pretty good record overall, and he's fought Thiago Moises and some other tough dudes as well. So, Yeah, I think Alvarez gets it done. I really do here.
I'll take him as well. Heavyweight bout, Jamal Pogues coming in at minus 145 against Mick Parkin, who's sitting at plus 115. Over under 1.5 rounds, minus 214 for the over, plus 174 for the under. The undefeated Mick Parkin making his UFC debut after his win on the Contender Series. Jamal Pogues, his sophomore outing since his debut against Josh Parisian. He got a dub there, 4-1 in his last 5. Both men 27 years of age, and both men pretty solid figures. Mick Parkin, training partner with Tom Aspinall now, making his debut in his home country. Who do you like in this one?
I think it's dog or pass here, and especially being in his home country. Jamal Pogues didn't do anything that really impressed me too much against Josh Parisian, who's not the best fighter in the world. And even on the Contender Series, I think Dana gave everybody a contract that week because he got the decision win on the Contender Series, and a pretty close fight. The striking numbers were pretty similar. Actually, I think he was outstruck in that fight and lost the decision. But anyways, didn't get a big finish on the Contender Series. Didn't score any knockdowns on the Contender Series. For a big guy like that, he does have decent volume, but he's not out there, just cracking dudes with a right hand or anything. And Mick Parkin at home, like you said, training with a really good or a really good training partner in Tom Aspinall, who is in his weight class, who is a guy that could contend for a title at heavyweight. So he gets a good look every time he goes to the gym. So I like guys like that. I like that he's in front of his home crowd. I like that he's a finisher too against Jamal Pogues, who's been out here getting decisions. So yeah, if he's a slight dog, I think it's dog or pass, and I'm going to stick with him.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Mick Parkin gets it done because I just haven't been too impressed with Jamal Pogues. The win over Parisian is like, throw that out the window. Parisian is pretty damn bad. And his win on the Contender Series weren't very impressive. I mean, he's got a solid jab, and he'll go for some takedowns. He landed 5 against Parisian, 7 on his Contender Series fight in 2019. We've touched on it before in recent breakdowns, but Jamal Pogues was a 205 or moved up to heavyweight because I think there's just more opportunity at heavyweight in the UFC. So I think that was probably a smart move. And Mick Parkin training with the big heavyweights in Tom Aspinall. It seems like they got a lot of heavyweights now training with each other there. I think that's good. And he got taken down a couple times on the Contender Series, but he was able to reverse position and get the finish. Just finishing abilities seems much better for Mick Parkin. And he's finished all of his fights. Jamal Pogues only has 5 finishes on his record. So out of his 10 wins, he's only got 5 finishes. Mick Parkin, 6-0, 6 finishes. So I like the finishing ability, especially with heavyweights and home country, home cooking as well. So
yep,
got to go with them. Middleweight bout here. Mahmoud Muradov coming in at minus 330 against Brian Bam Bam Barbarena, sitting at plus 240. Over under 2.5 rounds, minus 130 for the over. And even money for the under. Brian Bam Bam moving up to middleweight here. I don't know what's up with that. Is that a permanent move or just a one-time thing? But 3-2 in his last 5. 3-2 in Muradov's last 5 as well. Both men around the same age. Muradov, back-to-back losses for Muradov, so probably needs to get back in the win column here. Losses to Kyle Bahalio and Gerald Mearshart. Bahalio, can't hang your head on that one. He was an underdog in that. But the loss to Gerald Mearshart, Muradov was a minus 600 favorite and got submitted in the second round. So that was not a good look. But, I mean, he's probably going to be much stronger and much bigger in this one against, like, Bam Bam. But Bam Bam's a dog. He was a 155er at one point. Now he's moving up to 185. He was a 170er for a while. Not sure why he's moving up to 185. The size has been somewhat of a problem, especially the ground game as of recently, dealing with guys getting him to the ground and getting submitted. Takedown defense is always a problem with Bam Bam. He just wants to stand and strike with you. And in this one, I would be very cautious if I was Bam Bam about the takedowns from Muradov because, the recipe is there to how to beat Bam Bam. It's just take him down. And don't even let him, get going on the feet because if he starts doing that, he can overwhelm you. And Muradov looked pretty decent against Kyle Bahalio his last time out. Like, Bahalio's a very solid strike or grappler, and he was able to reverse. He was able to stop takedowns, and he made that fight fairly close. In this one, I think he just takes Bam Bam down, does work on the ground, but even on the feet, he can hang with Bam Bam. It's not like he's going to be anything crazy. So I got to go Muradov, but if it gets dirty, Bam Bam could shine. What do you think?
Yeah, Muradov seems to, struggle in fights against guys who can grapple a little bit better than him, or guys who threaten him with that submission threat, like GM3 and Kaio in his last fight. And I don't think he's going to have to worry about that here with Brian Barbarena on the feet. Like you said, he cracks as well. Brian moving up a weight class, probably going to be the smaller guy here, and probably not going to be as strong as Muradov either, which makes me think if Muradov wants to get this fight to the ground, he shouldn't have a big problem doing so. I mean, we've seen Brian taken down in the past before. We've seen Brian wear some damage in the past before. So anywhere this fight goes, I do think Muradov is going to have the slight advantage here. I think, though, if you are on Brian Barberena, I think it's because you're hoping that he just outpaces him with that volume. Maybe he stuffs the takedowns early, gets Muradov a little tired, and Brian just, as the fight goes on, gets a little bit stronger, puts a little more pace on him, and just wears him down. I could see that happening, but I just don't see him stuffing many takedowns in the first place here, especially going up against a guy who's going to be stronger than, Kaio and dudes like that. I think he's going to struggle in this fight. And, the move up to 185 is kind of interesting. And that's a big gap. I mean, that's 15 pounds. These dudes are going to be quite a bit bigger. I know Muradov's going to be a couple inches taller. He's going to have a few inches of reach. So, yeah, I think Muradov should win this fight. The only way Brian Barberena does is to just fight as well as he can and keep it on the feet and hope that Muradov gets tired as the fight goes on. But give me Muradov for the pick.
Yeah, Muradov has shown signs of having a bad gas tank. It's kind of why he got submitted against Mearshart in round 3 against Bahalio. He lost that one. So, yeah, if it does go into a third round, Bam Bam is always good for 3 rounds. He could take over. But, yeah, got to go with Muradov. Bantamweight bout here between ranked bantamweights. Vieira coming in at minus 160 against Kianzad, coming in at plus 130. Over under 2.5 rounds, minus 300 for the over, plus 225 for the under. So they're really expecting this one to go to a decision, and could be one of those greasy women's fights that goes to a decision and you don't really know who won. But Panny coming in as the underdog, 4-1 in her last 5. Vieira 3-2 in her last 5. Her last time out was against Raquel Pennington, and it was one of those fights, split decision, where you're not really sure who won, and she did not win. She had the win over Holly Holm. She got a split decision win. But yeah, she's a decision fighter, and I think it's just going to be one of those where it's like, all right, kind of flip the coin at the end of the fight, and who won, because there's probably going to be some cage control. There's going to be shots going both ways. Panny Kianzad got some pretty decent striking on the feet. She can do some work in the clinch, but she's literally gone to, or 13 of her 16 wins are by decision. So if she wins, it's probably going to be by decision. And this one, I think it's probably dog or pass. At the end of the day, you just got to chalk it up to that, because Panny, as the underdog, she probably could out-volume Catlin on the feet. And it's not a bad price at plus 130. It's going to go to a decision. Home cooking, maybe. I mean, it's in the UK. She's from Sweden. So it may not favor the Brazilian Ketlin Vieira. So I'm going to go Panny. What are you thinking?
Yeah, in a fight that goes to decision, in women's MMA, I think you always want to be holding the underdog ticket, especially 1-2. If this plays out on the feet, I think Kianzad that volume should look pretty good to the judges. I mean, you look at Ketlin, people were pretty high on her, but she loses to Raquel Pennington by split decision in her last fight. Holly Holm, she has the win over, but honestly, man, I thought Holly won the fight. I know a lot of people are with me on that. And if you do take that loss to Holly, then your only wins recently are Miesha Tate, who was coming back off of having a baby, been away forever, older, and then also Zara Eubanks. So loses to Yana Santos, loses to Irene Aldana, I'll give her credit, just fought for a title. But I mean, losing to Yana Santos doesn't age too well, especially the fact that you were taken down, or you took her down 3 times, landed 7 significant strikes, and Yana Santos was still able to get 47 off on you. So I just, I'm not as high on Ketlin Vieira as a lot of people are. I think she's going to be a tad slower than Kianzad here. And I think this thing probably will play out on the feet for the most part. And if so, like I said, man, I'd love to be going to the judge's decision, holding that underdog ticket for a girl who, is from that region of the world against a Brazilian. And Kianzad, last thing I'll say too, is her takedown defense sits at 80%. And she's fought a lot of girls who have tried to get her down. So, yeah, I think at a dog price, I think Kianzad's probably the way to go. That's who I'm going to pick.
Same here. I think it's a solid play. Lightweight bout here. Yanal Ashmouz coming in at plus 120 against Chris Duncan, who sits at minus 150. Over under 2.5 rounds, plus 135 for the over, minus 165 for the under. The undefeated Yanal Ashmouz, 7-0 for Ashmouz, 10-1 for Chris Duncan. His only loss was on the Contender Series to Vyacheslav Borshev. He made his UFC debut his last time out in March and got a win against Omar Morales. And coming into this one against Yanal Ashmouz, he in his debut, he used a lot of his wrestling to secure that win. I got to think that he goes to that again in this one because Yanal's coming off the big knockout win against Sam Patterson. And seems like he's got some bricks for hands. I mean, 5'9", but he packs a punch. And he put Sam Patterson into another dimension and made him think he was still fighting. So, yeah, if I'm Chris Duncan, considering you look at his Contender Series fight too. I mean, he got knocked down in his Contender Series fight. They didn't score it on the UFC stats, but he definitely got knocked down. And he got knocked out on the Contender Series before. So the chin is a question. Honestly, in the Morales fight too, he got stunned a couple times. So I'm Chris Duncan. I'm probably going to look to the grappling. He's been training at American Top Team as well, with the likes of Grant Dawson, Dustin Poirier, Yaroslav Amosov, Johnny Eblin. So very good training partners there, and a lot of guys that like to use the ground game, especially Grant Dawson. So I think he could implement a solid grappling game in this one. It really just comes down to how well can Yanal fight that off, because packs a punch. That's probably what his game plan is going to be coming into this one. So who do you think comes out on top?
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup just because in Chris Duncan's last fight, like Omar Morales gave him a little bit closer fight than I think people were anticipating. He was able to land 5 official takedowns on him. And, he looked good in the grappling department. On the feet, it was a pretty close fight. Like you said, he kind of got stunned a couple of times. And is Omar Morales in the UFC anymore? Did he get cut?
He got cut.
He got cut. So that kind of makes you wonder, too, like, how good is Chris Duncan? Because he's not dominating guys like Omar Morales who aren't UFC fighters anymore. He did lose on the Contender Series by knockout against Slava Klaus, who's obviously a great striker. And then he gets a knockout against Charlie Campbell. So it's just hard to get a read on him. Like, is he ready for this level? Is he not? Obviously, he's had a little bit of hype around him. He's looked good in some of his fights. But against who? That's the thing. When he does fight decent fighters or even lower level UFC fighters like Omar Morales, who, had some experience, he struggled at times. He got hit at times. Against Yanal Ashmouz, hits like a truck, man. Going to hit harder than Omar Morales. I think he's going to have a little more volume than Omar Morales as well. And, if Chris Duncan wants to try to grapple with him, Ashmouz has shown that he can land takedowns of his own. He can defend. I know a couple of his PFL fights, or in his last PFL fights, it was kind of a back and forth at times in the wrestling department, and he kind of held his own and went all the way to decision. So, I didn't like I don't want to say Chris Duncan has a bad gas tank, but he did slow down in that Omar Morales fight as the fight went on. But you kind of seen the same thing out of Yanal Ashmouz too in the PFL. So I think it's a pretty even fight. I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think. I think people probably think it's going to be somewhat close. I guess I don't know why I said that, but I just, for some reason, I think Ashmouz, had the big knockout here, but I don't see him going out there and flatlining a guy like Chris Duncan. I think Chris Duncan is durable enough and tough enough to where he's going to be able to eat some shots and he'll be there the whole fight. So I'm going to lean Chris Duncan here, especially In London, a lot of people are going to be rooting him on here. I think he gets it done. I think Ashmouz, it's a good fighter, is a tough fighter, but Chris Duncan, give me Chris Duncan.
It pains me to go against Chris Duncan because I like the training that he's getting in at American Top Team, but I got to go with Yanal Ashmouz just because slight underdog, undefeated. If you're getting a plus money on an undefeated fighter, it's never a bad thing. And I think Yanal, if he can defend the wrestling, I think he's got a great chance because I think he will have the bigger moments with the power. And if he can just stuff takedowns and make Chris Duncan stand and strike with him, then I think he could get a win, could get a knockout as well. So I'm going to go with Yanal Ashmouz.
I just fear that like watching him against Sam Patterson get the big knockout, people are going to be all over him here, and maybe it's just a little too high on him. And when he can't find that early knockout or that big knockout, like what's he look like at this level going forward from there? So overall, though, I mean, not a lot to go off of, and still a lot of unknowns kind of on both sides at the UFC level. So betting wise, like I don't know if I can throw anything significant on either one right now, but if you're watching this London card on Saturday, I think this is one you really got to keep your eye on. It should be a fun fight either way.
Yeah, could be a big overcorrection for Ashmouz, but should be a fun fight either way. Strawweight bout here, Bruno Brasil coming in at -150 against the debuting Shauna Bannon, sitting at +120, over under 2.5 rounds, -275 for the over, +220 for the under. Bruno Brasil coming off the knockout loss to D Gomes, which, can I say, ages pretty decently. And she's 3-2 in her last 5. Shauna Bannon undefeated, out of Ireland. Both ladies 29 years old, and a little bit of a reach advantage for Shauna Bannon. But Bruno Brasil, like I said, coming off the knockout, lost to D Gomes, which doesn't age too bad because D Gomes just knocked out Yasmin Haragui. And we know she's got big power. But watching that fight against D Gomes, like, D Gomes, she dictated the pace the entire way. Like, she was just coming forward, and Bruno Brasil hit her with some good counter shots, but she wasn't really in control in any part of that fight. But compared to like her Contender Series fight against Mark McCann, which was like just smooth sailing, like she could just sit at kicking range and kick her. This one against Shauna Bannon. Shauna Bannon is like pretty much your all-around type fighter. She's got some good kickboxing. She's got a kickboxing background. But if you watch a lot of her fights, she mixes it in pretty well. She'll, get the body lock and look for a trip into a takedown. She's got some pretty good top control from the top position, decent ground and pound. 3 wins by decision. She hasn't had a finish since last June. I mean, she's had 5 fights since April of 2022. So she's only been pro for a little over a year. But she's coming in here against Bruno Brasil, who's only lost by knockout. And do you think Shauna Bannon's going to knock her out? I'm not sure. But I think this one is like your classic women's MMA fight. Like, you got 2 pretty all-around fighters. They both like to mix it up. I don't know. It's like who dictates the pace better. And I looking at Bruno Brasil in her last fight, she didn't dictate it at all. So
right.
I don't. It's not very. It's not encouraging to like get behind as a better. Shauna Bannon, don't like betting on debuters, but she is undefeated. It's plus money. It's women's MMA. Doesn't look too bad. And she's fighting in the UK. So I'm gonna go with Shauna Bannon, but it's a greasy spot here. I wouldn't get too invested either way. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I wouldn't get too invested either way in this one either. We were both there when Bruno Brasil lost to Diakiese Gomes. And, she didn't look great in that fight. Like you said, had problems dictating the pace. I think Diakiese Gomes, so aggressive, just marched her down and came forward and brought the fight to her. But I think that's the type of fight where Bruno Brasil can learn from too. And you're fighting Shauna Bannon, and Bannon, where was it? Where was I reading? She obviously in a professional career is undefeated. But if you look at the girl she's beaten, man, 6-4 in her last win. The girl before that was 1-2. Before that, 3-0, 3-0, 1-1. Like, she's not fighting anybody, like anybody. Trash opponents.
Yeah.
And this is exactly the type of fight where people are going to be, want to see this chick come in here and win. People are going to lay their money on her. because she's looked good against these lower level opponents. And then she goes out there and she's another, girl who just gets beaten by somebody who has a little bit more experience than her. I mean, we see it time and time again in women's MMA. I think it could happen here again. I think Bruna Brasil is better than her last fight. And, striking wise, she's pretty good. She showed it on the Contender Series against Marnik Man, who, was a lot smaller than her and not the best fighter in the world. But I just think she's got a shot to redeem herself against a UFC newcomer here. So give me Bruno Brasil in this one.
I hate that price on Bruno Brasil. If Bruno Brasil was
betting
the
wise,
underdog, I would have been all over it. But yeah, no. I'm gonna stick with Shauna Bannon because I think the crowd will be on her side. It's women's MMA, man. If she gets one takedown, the crowd's gonna go crazy, and you could just tell that's how it's gonna play out.
Yep.
Flyweight bout here. Filho coming in at -130 against Daniel Barez, sitting at even money. Over under 1.5 rounds, -240 for the over, +200 for the under. And we're looking at this one 4-1 in their last 5 for both men, and kind of older flyweights. I mean, 30 years of age for Filho, 34 years of age for Daniel Barez, making his UFC debut. Fought on the Contender Series before. That was against Carlos Hernandez. And then he went out and got four wins in a row, all by finish.
First round, too.
All in the first round. Yeah, I mean, just kind of wiped the floor with these guys. Not the greatest competition. I mean, 14-12, 6-9, 7-9, 10-9. But either way, it's getting him out of there first round. And you watch him fight, man. He's got some pretty solid hands, pretty quick hands. And Filho, we all know him for almost knee barring Muhammad Mokaev his last time out. And then almost going from an almost knee barring an undefeated guy to getting your back taken with a guy with one leg and then getting tapped out with like a minute left in the fight was pretty wild. He's coming in here as a slight favorite against Daniel Barez, making his UFC debut. The Spaniard, who are you taking?
All right, so Filho, I liked what I saw at times against Mokaev. Like, I know Mokaev dominated some parts of that fight, but getting him in that knee bar, the way he did it was super slick in itself. And I think he gassed himself out trying to find the finish, left his neck open, and gets submitted. Both of these guys, I believe, have won the majority of their fights by submission. Excuse me. No, I guess Barez has 7 knockouts, 6 submissions. Both guys have 2 submission losses, though. And I think that's where this fight's. I think this fight could play out on the ground. I think either guy could get it there. I think Filho is lost by submission to better competition. I think he's probably going to be slightly better on the ground. I think Barez obviously probably going to hold more power in the hands. But against Filho, for Filho, you got to have some pretty high confidence, even taking that loss to Muhammad Mokaev, who is the next best thing at this division. Everybody's super high on him. The UFC kind of build them up slow, and that's exactly what they want to do with guys that they think could, be at the top of the division for a while. So I think you take away great things from that fight, even in a loss. And now you're coming in here against a UFC debuter who, is a dangerous guy. Against Carlos Hernandez on the Contender Series, went to split decision, and Carlos Hernandez looked pretty damn good in his last fight, especially on the feet. So shows you he can hang with guys like that. So it does make it tricky, especially since the fact that this dude's obviously motivated. If you take a loss in the Contender Series, you're probably down in the dumps thinking, I just missed my opportunity for the UFC. And then you go out and get 4 first-round finishes. So that tells me he's hungry and he wants this super bad. So that makes it really interesting. But I do see this fight going to the ground at some point, and I do see Filho being slightly better. And if you can get Muhammad Mokaev in that situation, I think you can get Daniel Barez in that one too. But again, this is just a pick. This isn't a bet because both guys are pretty dangerous, and this fight could probably go either way.
Daniel Barez fought Manel Kape back in 2014, lost to him. Mark Goddard was the referee for that one. That was an AFL 2 in Madrid. Quite the scene back then. It was almost 10 years ago. But
both guys are just getting started.
Yeah, right. 34 years old, debuting, which is interesting. I mean, he's got to make a move now. That's for sure. So I'm probably going to come into this one with some urgency. Filho, I don't know. I mean, is that like more? Do you have more confidence after losing to Mokaev, or do you have less confidence because you couldn't finish him?
I mean, nobody's ever beat him, and everybody gets dominated by him.
Yeah,
so,
but you had him like dead to rights,
and
then you didn't finish him. Then he finished you with one leg, which is pretty
true.
wild. But
to be fair, I mean, 99.9% of people tap to that knee bar.
yeah,
And dude, that was locked in. I mean, he almost ruined the career of Muhammad Makayev.
yeah, he literally
So
did. Before
crazy.
that, though, the win to Robert Echevarria was pretty nice on the Contender Series.
Yeah,
Knockout in the third round, it looked pretty good. And then he's got a win against Vinicius Salvador as well. So, I mean, I think this is probably fairly priced. I think Filho should be a slight favorite, and it's flyweights, so there's a lot of randomness. For the pick, I'm going to go with Daniel Barez, just fighting in over in Europe. I like it. Making his UFC debut, he's got to go now. I like the striking too. I just think the way he throws his hooks are pretty violent, and he mixes it up, goes to the body, goes to the head, and I think he could find a combination that could stun him a couple times here and there. And Filho, not like super high volume on the feet, like his fight against Echevarria, he was going for more so takedowns, and when they were on the feet, he wasn't like a wild thrower. So I think on the feet, Barez could outvolume him and maybe put him away. I'll go with him for the pick.
I'd love to see what the line is for this fight to go the distance, because I think a lot of people probably be thinking it's going to end inside the distance just based off the finishes both these guys have.
Yeah.
But they both seem super tough on the feet too. So I'll be interested to see the line on that.
Agreed. But that's the end of the card. Those are the picks. And we'll keep you guys in tune if you're in the double leg premium, what's going on with the bets throughout the week, and they'll be finalized on Friday. If you want to get in on the double leg premium, link will be down in the description. If you want just the plays for this weekend, they'll be available on Friday for an instant download. Just stay tuned for that on the Instagram at the double leg. You get updated there. Other than that, you can follow me on the medias at HeyJaiPicks. Where can they find you?
Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at the Parlay MMA.
If you're watching here on YouTube, drop a subscription to support the channel, and so we can keep pumping these videos out to you guys and getting you guys the breakdowns and the recaps. So we'll see you in the next video, recapping some UFC London. Good luck, and the double leg signing out.